And a lot of you know the chant we're going to do this morning. And again, it's in the document, which I've put into the paste just now. I put into the chat just now. And it's the Four Quarters chant. And the more traditional title is The Suffusion with the Divine Abidings. These four beautiful abidings of loving kindness, compassion, appreciative joy, or here it's translated as gladness, and equanimity as the fourth. So let's open that up if you haven't, and we'll set these four divine abidings, these four beautiful qualities in motion. So if you just joined in, I'll paste that into the chat one more time. I will abide, pervading one quarter, with a mind imbued with loving kindness. Likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth, so above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself, I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with the mind imbued with loving kindness, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility, and without ill will. I will abide, pervading one quarter, with a mind imbued with compassion, likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth, so above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself, I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with a mind imbued with compassion, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility, and without ill will. I will abide, pervading one quarter, with a mind imbued with gladness, likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth, so above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself, I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with a mind imbued with gladness, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility, and without ill will. I will abide, pervading one quarter, with a mind imbued with equanimity, likewise the second, likewise the third, likewise the fourth, so above and below, around and everywhere, and to all as to myself, I will abide, pervading the all-encompassing world, with this mind imbued with equanimity, abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without hostility, and without ill will. So settling in to our sitting posture. And of course, these words we've just chanted, that's more than a chant. It's really this invitation. So whatever the particular quality of love that seems most accessible right now for us, we have this intention to abide with that basic goodness, that basic friendliness of the heart, compassion, appreciation, equanimity, the heart that knows how to include and knows how to be close, knows how to be real. In other words, we're learning how to relax into our lives right now when conditions are like this. Is it okay now to feel the sitting body, to open and feel the breathing body? No matter the particular sensations, the particular tensions that we might feel in the body, even numbness. Perhaps it's safe now to be present, to be even intimate, undefended with the body, just as it is right now. Just actually in real time, we're exploring if it is in fact safe to relax and open and feel the body. And of course, the experience of the body isn't a static thing. It's changing, evolving, perhaps intensifying, whatever. Is it okay to soften and to be a little bit more receptive, a little bit more curious and open with the body? We feel the rhythm of the breathing here in the body. We feel the grosser sensations of the sitting body. And we feel all the more subtle, energetic sensations, vibration. So the full range of embodiment that's always here and now, always changing, evolving. So to be present with the body is a very alive, dynamic practice. It's not like we can do it and then we're done doing it. It's always moment by moment, this being present, being open, being aware of the body. And it's an act of both wisdom and love, kindness, to be close, to be open in this way. And if we can learn how to be present in this dynamic way with the body, then there's a chance, a possibility of being present, open to what is usually more subtle, the quality of the heart, the qualities of our sensitive heart right here, what is being felt right here in the middle of things, in the middle of this moment, this life. How's the heart doing? What's the heart feeling now? Is it safe to be interested? Is it safe to open and feel what's here to feel? To be in a way exposed to the feeling heart, the sensitive heart. Undefended. And opening to the heart in the same way of opening to the body, it means we're willing to be with something that's alive with change. The heart, the feelings, qualities of the heart, it's like a moving river of feeling, of qualities, emotional qualities, energetic qualities. Is it okay to let the heart move and feel in the way the heart is moving and feeling? Is it safe to trust this movement in the heart? And you can just explore around the edges, just try. What happens when I relax? What happens when I become more interested, more open, and receptive? Present with the sitting, breathing body as a river of sensation, subtle sensations, and the more gross and obvious sensations of the body. Everything has permission to move, to change, and also sensitive to the feeling heart, whether it's a heavy or anxious heart or a light and buoyant, happy heart. We learn to say, yes, the heart's like this now. And I'm not afraid. I'm practicing not being afraid to be with the body, to be with the sensitive heart, and to be with the spinning, thinking mind. All the mental activity, moments of doubt, moments of clarity. This is the nature of our life, the movement of body, the movement of heart and mind. And just maybe it's okay to let our life move now, exactly how it's moving, even if it feels intense or even if it's unpleasant, maybe still it's okay to trust the nature of our life, the nature of this body, heart, and mind to move, to unfold, as if it has permission just to keep moving, keep changing, keep evolving. We give it permission to be unfolding in the way that it's unfolding, not needing this life to be different right now. making peace with these changing conditions of the mind and body and the sensitive heart. We may not know much, but right here and now we can learn to have a very wholesome, very intimate relationship with what's moving, the nature of our life that's moving, the body, the sensitive heart, the spinning mind, all of which is moving. I wonder if it's possible to be at ease. Breathing in, recognizing it's just this, just these experiences being known, being felt. And with each out breath, just a reminder of the possibility of being at ease, allowing, trusting, relaxing. And with the next in breath, remembering, yeah, it's just this being known, being felt. Can this be okay? And as we're breathing out, just that exploration of ease and trust and letting things be. So it can be helpful sometimes to interweave the practice with the rhythm of breathing in and breathing out. And we use the breathing in as a reminder to be interested and to be open and to feel everything that's moving in the moment. And we use the exhalation as a reminder to allow and trust and let go. So explore that, and you can even use meditation words with the in-breath. Just this is being known, and allowing, or the word ease with the out-breath. But find your own way, experiment a little, and we'll continue our practice now in silence. we're learning how to cultivate this beautiful, stable refuge of patience that is wise and soft, kind, right in the middle where we feel everything that's moving in the moment. The body, sensitive heart, the thinking mind. And we're not afraid of our life being or feeling the way that it is now. Patience knows how to be right in the middle, even if things are confusing or unclear. And this wisdom of patience also has this good feeling of belonging here in the moment, regardless of how the moment is. Being sensitive, being aware, being forgiving. This is the right place to be. This stability of wisdom and love that we call patience. So for the last 5 minutes or so, just do your best to clarify this refuge, this possibility of a wise and patient presence, and to sense its stability regardless of what's moving. So we'll continue for a few more moments in silence. Simply sitting here exploring the stability of patience, the softness of patience, the clarity of patience. The fearless exposure of patience. And perhaps even sensing it as a kind of spiritual superpower, this capacity to be right in the middle, unafraid, to be sensitive, to feel. And take a little time to adjust the body and even stretch a little if you'd like. So, a big welcome to everyone. If you're new, and a especially big welcome. And we've been, for those who haven't been here, we've been looking these last few months at the 10 paramis. The paramis are these beautiful qualities that arise naturally, strengthen naturally when we're waking up, when we're starting to see what we haven't seen in our lives, in our heart and mind. Excuse me, we'll notice generosity or renunciation or a beautiful moral sensitivity, or the energy of persistence, or a real valuing of truthfulness, resoluteness, equanimity, loving kindness, and patience. So we'll be talking about patience for the next maybe 3 weeks as one of these 10 paramis. And all of these paramis, they're not so much a stance we take, I'm going to be patient, or I'm going to be truthful, or I'm going to be wise. That we probably get how neurotic that would be, just to, as if we could make a decision. I'm going to be a patient human being, or I'm going to be a generous human being. It's not really respecting the force of stinginess, for example, or the force of impatience, or all the other forces. It's really the paramis we're going against the stream of our habit energies. I mean, it's not that we don't have some wholesome habit energies, but a lot of them really arise out of greed, hatred, and delusion, the 3 unwholesome roots as we talk about them in early Buddhism. So we get to know the opposite of these unwholesome roots and all the varied expression of greed, hatred, and delusion, like impatience. And we get to sense the other possibility. And for those who stay for the small group today, or just find a time at home to have a conversation with a Dharma friend or somebody else who's doing their best to be more present in life, you can talk about patience and bring to mind with each other those places in our life where we're regularly impatient, where we feel like we're waiting, we're leaning forward. And then just, using our imagination and our intuition. Well, what would patience feel like, look like in this situation? Like, for example, if traffic is a real thing for you, where, it evokes a lot of impatience or irritation or rage or whatever it might be. So initially, just imagine not doing that. Okay, what would the alternative be? What would not being impatient be? And we might, all we can do initially is maybe imagine suppressing the impatience. Like, I'm just not going to be impatient. But that might open, even that, as ineffective, inefficient as that strategy might be, we might learn a thing or two. As opposed to just letting the impatience keep going. The definition that from one of the ancient texts, this is after the time of the Buddha, a few centuries, but they often talk about these wholesome qualities as, their function, their manifestation, and their proximate cause. So patience is said to have the characteristic of acceptance. Its function is to endure the desirable and the undesirable. Its manifestation is tolerance. And seeing things as they really are is its proximate cause. So, if we want to be patient, we have to open, we have to be curious. Because patience really comes out of being connected. It isn't something we imitate. It isn't some contrivance or some demand that we place upon our mind. You're going to be the most patient person. Generally, that leads to explosions of impatience. you know how it is. It's like when we're the one, or one of our friends is the one who's really trying to kind of tolerate something they find intolerable. And then when we're being a little, mischievous, we try to just tip the person over the edge where they're exposed to their impatience. They're pretending to be patient. They're trying to be patient. But it's really repression. As opposed to what is said in the tradition is the proximate cause for patience, which is really feeling and seeing things as they are. That's why, I don't know if you remember at the end of the meditation today, the guided meditation, I kind of gave us this image of a solidity, like a huge, immovable edifice of patience, but not in a rigid or fixed way, but I think more related to faith energy, like having a deep faith that I can be right in the middle, patiently at ease, until some appropriate doing needs to be done. And I'm not afraid of doing, I'm not afraid of movement, I'm not afraid of speaking, and I'm not afraid of keeping quiet and keeping still and not doing. And that's, it's sort of a paradoxical kind of stability, because it's this very dynamic tipping point. Because I don't neurotically have to do or have to control or have to become, but I don't have to neurotically not do, not become, not speak. And that's really what patience is. It's the heart that's connecting and comprehending or discerning the way it is. And when we're in that place of being connected in that deeper, more subtle way, it's like we realize how easy it is to act on impulse, speak on impulse in a way that wasn't helpful to ourselves or to anybody else. And that the more we're aware, the more we're awake, the more we realize that our life, like how to be Mark, how for you to be you, it's not figure outable, in a sense of like, okay, I've written the manual of how to be Mark. It's just not going to be done. Because it's true for all of these wholesome qualities, and it's just generally true in terms of being a happy, skillful human being. It can only be figured out moment by moment. How to be skillful, how to be compassionate, how to be wise, how to live caring about the well-being of everyone, can only be figured out in the moment, for just that moment. We never get the whole picture. As an egoic being, a self-centered being, I want the whole picture. I want the whole map laid out. Oh, okay, now I see it. This is how I live my life. This is my brand. This is my personality. This is how I'm going to do my relationship with my partner. This is how I'm going to earn my living. This is how I'm going to participate with this issue and that issue. But in a way, we live in the dark in terms of that full picture of past, present, future. But we're not in the dark because there is a way. But the way isn't having the full picture. The way forward, the way that's trustworthy, is to be fully connected, deeply connected, but not connected to my idea of who I am and how I should live my life, connected to the wildness of the present moment. And that's that, like, one of the pieces of that connection is the stability of patience. And the Buddha calls it the greatest austerity. I really like that. It's like, it will burn us up. It has to. It burns away all of the impulsiveness, all of the reactivity, all of the fear of not knowing what I'm doing. Because part of inhabiting patience is like being like, I know that I don't know what I'm doing. I'm really comfortable knowing that I don't know. Because the reason I'm comfortable knowing that I don't know is I know action, choosing, doing will arise through the process of connecting, being present. Sitting still arises naturally when I'm present. Acting, speaking loudly, speaking truth to power happens when I'm connected. The skillful response, the appropriate response, isn't known until that moment where the sensitive heart is fully present, patiently present. Only then does the heart have a sense of, I'm going to say this, I'm going to refrain from saying that, I'm going to do this, I'm going to refrain from doing, I'm going to do a backflip, I'm not going to do a backflip. And that's really hard from a self-centered or an egoic point of view, because it's really turning our life over to nature instead of turning our life over to this imagined sense of me in the control tower who's supposed to have a plan. And even though that never was true, we've imagined that it's true for a long time. And it's hard to get over that habit. Even though that habit's never really worked for anybody, it's still a habit. It still has a lot of, I guess you could call it momentum, or it has its own coherence, even though in a Buddhist sense it's delusion. This idea that there's a me who, in a sense, owns or has this life, is responsible for this life. It's not to say that there isn't a difference between acting, relating, being skillful and being unskillful. There's clearly the possibility for both, being skillful and being unskillful. And as somebody who cares, we want to understand, well, what supports skill and what gets in the way? And what supports that skill is that patient presence, patient endurance. And that word endurance or perseverance, steadfastness, they're really important, because part of what we have to endure, partly what we have to feel when we come into the present moment, are all of the impulses to do, to think, to speak, to act. It's not like those impulses are bad or good. They're just programmed impulses. Some may be appropriate, some may be very unskillful given, the particular moment. But we want to learn how to be in the wildness of all of the impulses that are arising, that are being felt, that are moving in the body, heart, and mind, right here, right now. Because otherwise, if we don't know how to inhabit that space where there are a lot of tendencies, impulses, reactions, if we don't know how to inhabit that space, the alternative is for the mind to identify with the first strong impulse. And we identify with it, that's who we are, that's what we're doing, and then that's just sort of the life of being on autopilot, where we're basically pushed around. The mind, this life, is driven by the existing habit energies that have the most momentum. We're not really fully a human being at that point. We're just afraid, or haven't learned yet, how to inhabit this ambiguous, confusing space of feeling so many possibilities. And a lot of what might actually be an appropriate response to the moment are not the loudest impulses or tendencies that are showing up in the moment. They may be a much quieter impulse to say this, to do this, to refrain. But we'll never know unless we have this sort of profound, soft, clear, patient presence, where we're feeling the complexity. You know, all those impulses that we feel, it's just the past speaking to the moment. That's how we know there's a past. You know, there's no way, you know, we can't actually take a hold of the past. It is gone. But somehow we're pretty sure there was a past. How do we know? Because right now, there's such a rich movement in our hearts. Where does that rich movement, it's sort of the rich movement that's informing the present moment, where does that rich movement come from? Past impressions. And some of those past impressions are wise, useful, and a lot of those past impressions and tendencies are based on sort of a wrong understanding, a wrong interpretation of the past that happened back then, but are arising now as an impulse, a reactive tendency in the heart, body, mind. We feel it on all levels, really, right? And we have to, patience kind of creates that space for wise choices to refrain from doing or to actually do something. And again, it's not about, you know, there's a lot of wrong understanding that patience is somehow the equivalent of passivity or of not doing. Patience is really an attitude, an understanding that the wise response, the appropriate response, the compassionate response requires this hanging out in this difficult place. We call it the present moment, where there's such a rich and complex and, if misunderstood, confusing movement of feeling. Because the past doesn't speak with one voice. Have you noticed? You know, the past in the way that it wants to inform the present. Because there isn't one Mark who has sort of distilled all experience into like, okay, I got it, it's me now, you know, and I've concluded this. No, there's just all these different lessons that were partially learned or wrongly learned or well learned, right? These are all those layers of impressions that have been laid down in the past that then show up as impressions in the moment. And it's not cognitive. We don't figure it out by thinking about it. We just, in a way, we create the space for all of these impressions to reveal themselves. And then they're not in the past. They're being felt, seen, experienced here and now, in the moment. And it can happen very quickly in a matter of a moment or two. Or it may take several moments or several minutes or who knows. But as long as we're not clear, as long as there isn't sort of the green light where wisdom says, I know that I don't know, but this impulse seems to be coming from a wise and kind place. Feels worthy of being given permission to move into speech or action or whatever that response might look like in the moment. But we don't pretend that we're sure or certain. We continue to be patiently present with what we're feeling and seeing and experiencing. You know, it's sort of the opposite, where a lot of what we sometimes, at least some folks, are reinforced for is sort of that action piece. And in this sort of Buddhist practice, especially when we're talking about patience, we're really emphasizing the exposure of patience, not so much the doing. Because the trust is that the doing will happen on its own. Speaking up or not speaking up, doing something or not doing. Remember, just not doing something is an action. A lot of times we think, action is only when we're moving the body. No, just sitting there can be a very creative, bold action, in the same way that standing up and speaking up can be a bold and creative action, useful action. But the question is, what supports skillfulness? Not so much thinking that I have to be the doer and being afraid of not being the doer, but being connected, as I mentioned earlier, to really emphasize the connection and the patient endurance of what's being felt, what's moving. And not in a hurry to figure it out. Not in the hurry for this moment to become the next moment. So there's a lot of that emphasis on humility. It's really related to, I mentioned patience as a kind of superpower. And this non-fear with not knowing that I don't know, or humility, which is really just the same as saying that the heart is open and curious, willing to learn, willing to sort of let life inform the moment, let the past and the present inform. Let the action, let the living of this life arise from the intimacy of the connection. Because otherwise, the living of this life is going to come from our neurotic thoughts, or incomplete or imperfect thoughts that mostly have been conditioned by culture, and fear and aversion and greed and delusion. But we can interrupt the imperfection and incompleteness of our cognitive understanding by growing roots into the present moment. Initially, it might feel a little contrived. Like initially, it might feel like I'm holding myself back. And it's true, because initially, or not initially, the habit is just to ride the first big habit that shows up in the moment. And of course, that's who I am, because that's what I'm feeling. That's how I'm feeling right now. That's how I'm seeing things right now. This is who I am. This is the conclusion I've made. So we misinterpret the strong initial impulse. We interpret it as me. And of course, I should know what I'm doing, because it's me. So we just do it. But what wisdom and patience allow is that recognition, well, that's just the first impulse being known, being felt. It feels like this. I don't need to be afraid of feeling that and not presuming it knows what it's doing. Imagine the life we would have lived if we just did the first impulse, always acted on our first impulse. I mean, I used to work with kids in schools that were having trouble, with their behaviors. And, a lot of it was, the child just in the habit of doing the first thing that comes to mind. Oh, I like that. I'm going to take it. I'm angry at the teacher. I'm going to tell the teacher off. No restraint, no capacity to sort of feel the impulse, to realize it's an impulse. It's just an impulse. It feels like this. And in feeling the impulse, to have a sense of what that might set in motion. Oh yeah, that may not be the best thing to set in motion. Let me hang out and see what other impulses there are here in the moment that I might ride into, the next moment to sort of live out. It's really the way to live a creative and nimble, flexible life, is this capacity for patience. Even though initially, we sometimes interpret it as a kind of, we hear these words like restraint, refraining from, and it just feels a little tight. But yeah, we definitely want that particular, it's an aspect of patience, a particular skill to know that there's a reactive impulse, to know that it feels like this. So it's not repression. We're totally aware. We're opening, we're giving it permission in a way to fully express itself as a felt movement in the body and mind, heart. So it's not repression. We're just not bringing it out in terms of, we're not mentally proliferating, We're not speaking out loud. We're not acting it out through thought, word, or deed. We're just feeling it. We're letting it move, and we're understanding it for what it is. This is the past informing the present. It feels like this. Does it seem helpful right now to act it out in one way or another? I'm not so sure. Maybe not. Let me just keep feeling it. For as long as it's here to feel, let me keep feeling it. And when we feel it, it has the nature to sort of blossom and fade, and then we might notice some other approaches, other impulses. So in the weeks ahead, we'll talk about patience in three ways, as this sort of gentle perseverance or gentle steadfastness, this capacity to kind of let stuff move. In a more dramatic way, patience can even allow us, this is the second kind of patience that we'll be talking about next week, especially patience with what's difficult, patience with insult and pain. And then the third is really patience as a way of accepting, like letting the truth land. A lot of our activity of thought, word, and deed is an avoidance of the truth of the moment. So part of patience is letting the truth of the moment reveal itself, letting it in, letting it touch the heart, so to speak. So let me just talk a little bit more. I'll share from Michelle McDonald-Smith. Michelle McDonald. It used to be McDonald-Smith, one of my teachers back in the 90s. She used to teach a lot of the 3-month retreats at Insight Meditation Society. Still teaches there. Wonderful teacher. And Michelle wrote an article in the handout that I put in the chat, and I'll do it one more time in case some of you who came in late didn't get it. But there are several resources, including an article by Gil Fronsdal on patience, and Ajahn Sushito on patience, and Michelle McDonald on patience. So you could do some reading, and then some traditional texts too from the Buddhist tradition on patience. So, but this is Michelle's take on this part of patience. It's really about this gentle forbearance. The first aspect of patience is a gentle forbearance. We may be the exhausted parent of a child who is having a fit over some baffling homework. Perhaps patience in this case means taking a few deep breaths instead of yelling in frustration. Or we may be on the verge of making a brilliant retort to a coworker, but we hold our tongue rather than say something hurtful. Even though our impatience is triggered, we can tap into a deeper reservoir of our motivation not to do harm. Gentle forbearance may feel difficult, even contrived, right? We're going against the stream of our habit energies. And she writes, because it doesn't constitute true acceptance of how things are. But it is, nevertheless, a critical aspect of patience, because it helps us restrain ourselves long enough to determine the most skillful action for the moment. So this first week, when we're looking at patience, maybe especially keep in mind this forbearance, knowing how easy it is to act in ways that cause harm, to speak in ways, and even think in ways that cause harm. We're willing to be patient. We're willing to refrain because we don't yet know whether the impulse to think and speak and do is really going to be helpful. We're not sure yet, so we're going to refrain. And like Michelle says here, it may feel initially contrived, but that's okay because we're trying to reduce the harm. To get through the day, to get through this meeting, causing the least amount of harm. It will be imperfect, right? Nobody gets through life without causing ourselves or others harm. We're doing it all the time. But it's a really enlivening and beautiful aspiration not to cause harm. And that's a lot of what this gentle forbearance, this gentle perseverance. It's like, I don't know yet how to be in this moment without causing harm. So I'm just going to hold back a little until I have a little bit more clarity on how to navigate this moment without causing harm. Because I know how easy it is to cause harm. Been there, done that. How many times have we, because we weren't patient, said something, done something that was really painful? Or we ourselves. I mean, I've done so many, just recently, in the last couple of weeks, I just had a bad fall just because I was doing all this physical work, clearing a tree that had fallen over in an impatient way. I was like really getting into getting it done, and like gonna impress Win, my partner, by how much work I got done. I was impatient and I really hurt my body. I fell back and really banged my elbow in a way that I'm not sure if it's ever going to be quite the same, just because I didn't have that wisdom of patience. She writes a related piece here that I think is really important, because related to the wish to not harm is also this wish to forgive. So Michelle writes, anytime we want life to be different than it is, we are caught in impatience. We lose our sense of humor, and self-pity, despair, and blame seep into the heart. Probably sounds familiar, all those places. This could be a little mindfulness spell for us when we lose our sense of humor, or blame or self-pity creeps in. And she writes, gentle forbearance includes the spirit of forgiveness. When we feel conflict with others, understanding their suffering is the first step in being able to communicate, forgive, and begin again. Right? We often feel like somehow, like I am the arm of karma. So when somebody's doing something that we think they deserve a karmic reaction, they're being bad and karma has to sort of show them they're being bad. Is that true? The practice of forgiveness, Michelle writes, happens when we are able to realize the underlying cause of our anger and impatience, and this allows us to distinguish between someone's unskillful behavior and essential goodness. Serenity and calm develop as we learn to accept imperfection in others and ourselves. Yeah, and one of the phrases, a couple phrases that I like, one, some of you have heard me say, it's not easy being a human being. So when we're in that place where we're getting triggered, we feel like we've got to be the corrective, critical voice of the universe and let the person know how their behavior is off. We could just see what happens when we remember, what? It isn't easy being a human being. It isn't easy having a conditioned mind and heart. Oh yeah. And then the other related thing is just understanding that sometimes it's like this. So when we see somebody doing something that we think is less than perfect, just that universal understanding. Oh yeah, sometimes our actions are imperfect. Sometimes it's like this. Sometimes I'm the one who's acting unskillfully. Sometimes it's another person. And to really see this person's so-called unskillful behavior, to really practice seeing it as nature. Yeah, this happens sometimes. People, because of ignorance, do unskillful things. Doesn't mean we're not going to say something or do something. It just means we don't have to say or do something. That's that nimble place. So if something can be said, something can be done that benefits the totality of the moment, benefits all, we're not afraid to be that person who says or does something. But if it isn't going to contribute to the well-being, my own well-being, the well-being of others, why would we say it? We don't have to be that critical voice, like I have to say it because this person's behavior is less than perfect. And it almost feels like some violation to truth if their imperfect behavior isn't called out. But is that really true? I know this is, I really have to work on this, continue to work on this in my life. This, being a sensitive person with a critical eye, just in terms of my temperament, I see a lot. I sense, my own imperfections and the imperfections of those around me. And I feel that impulse to sort of, do something about it. And one thing we can do about it is realize, oh yeah, it's not easy being a human being, and sometimes it's like this. This is also nature, this imperfect world. And that's the forgiveness I think that Michelle is talking about here. So to end, I'll just share, this is, maybe I'll leave Gail Fronsdal's article for you to read on your own, or I'll bring it up next week. But this is just a paragraph from Ajahn Sucitto. And if you don't remember, he's one of our elders in our early Buddhist tradition here in the West. He's been a Buddhist monk in the Thai forest tradition for a long time, born in England, so an English person. And in this book that I've linked to in the handouts, he writes, patience may at first strike you as a teeth-gritting, hang on until it's over quality. But this would not be perfect patience, because in such a case the mind is still longing for the end of the experience. Aversion hasn't been relinquished. Perfect patience has the soft and heartful strength of having all the time in the world. I really like that. To rest in an experience. It relaxes the edge of time. The transformative power of patience is such that, as the mind relaxes its defensiveness and bristling, the annoying delay becomes an occasion for spaciousness, and the other person's irritating behavior is something you can meet with empathy as their unfortunate problem. Naturally, it also includes the wisdom to know what one just has to bear with, and when there is the occasion to act in a clear and responsible way. Patience is not meant to transform you into a doormat, but to act as a fire break on immediate impulses that will not bring around your welfare. And as our conditioning is often one of getting things done quickly as possible, it's skillful to check that attitude with wisdom. So wishing you all luck. And for those who can stay, just one of the things you can bring up, or those who can't stay for the small groups at home this week with a friend, just talk together about those places in your life where you feel impatient, where you feel like you're waiting. And just creatively imagine a different way of being in those particular moments and what that would be like. So because we're here in September, a lot is beginning. Monday, tomorrow, begins the fall Buddhist Studies course that I'll be teaching. And that will be on the fourth foundation of mindfulness, the culmination of our year-long study of the Buddhist teachings on mindfulness. So join us for that, 8 Mondays beginning tomorrow night. There's an introduction to mindfulness class beginning on Tuesday, 7:30 to 9. Both are in person and on Zoom. Shelley Graff will be teaching or leading the day-long retreat at the end of the month. That will be September 25th, Saturday, 9:30 to 4. This coming Saturday, several of our leaders, including myself, will be leading a masculinity conversation at Common Grounds Retreat Center in Prairie Farm, Wisconsin. You can get more information on the calendar. Drive Out will help form some carpool so people can come out. And anybody who identifies as a male or masculine is welcome to join us for this day-long conversation. And of course, we have our regular practice check-ins every week. Sunday afternoon, when Fricke and myself at 4:30. Tuesday at 12 noon with Stacy McClendon and myself. Shelley Graff does Thursday at 9 a.m. every week. And Ramesh Sairam has a practice discussion every other Saturday. I think it's the first and third Saturday. Wonderful ways to bring up your questions that you have from practice, or just be part of a community conversation of what the practice looks like in our lives.